What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Going Rogue podcast. We've been on a brief hiatus. Life has been lifing. First of all, thank you to everyone that helped out with the Woodridge Farm Celtic Festival and Blue Ridge Championship. That was a fantastic time. That also means that now that we are on the backside of that, you do not have to listen to my massive ad reads yet. But that being said, if you are interested in sponsoring next year's games, go check out the link on our website. You can find it toward the bottom of the Blue Ridge Championship page on goingrogue.com, as well as the Woodridge Farm Celtic Festival page. That being said, we do already have one company that is in next year. No surprise to anyone, the Kilted Patriot will be back and bigger and will be a flagship sponsor for our games. So please go check them out. It is a fantastic nonprofit that has been giving back like crazy to this beautiful little community of the Highland Games, and very specifically driven at improving the athlete experience. I am certain that you guys have seen them all over the place. If you are not following them, go follow them on Facebook, on Instagram. Go buy some gear off the website. They have tons of cool stuff, and they're always making more. And if you see them at a game, go tell them thank you. They are really putting their heart into this. So go check them out as soon as you can. Now, we are starting a new series about the off season. I don't have a clever name for it yet, and maybe by the time I listen to this, I will. And you guys can forget I said this. I'm not re-editing it. I am lazy. So, but we are going to try and give you ideas and outlines and templates on how to better run your off season. So we will have multiple guests on the pod here to talk to you about everything from the weight room to your nutrition to structuring throws practice to what to do with your free time, to side quests, to really just kind of hit from all angles and at all levels what people are doing with their off season, what you maybe should or shouldn't be doing with your off season, and how to structure that stuff, just to give you guys a all around approach and something to do with all of the downtime that we seem to find ourselves with. That's a joke. During these winter months when games are not in abundance and we kind of have some time to rebuild things. So, yeah, keep checking us out. If you aren't subscribed, go subscribe. All of these will also be on our YouTube. The more of you that are over there allows me to do things more often next year, like hopefully go live and put out some more video edits on YouTube. So check us out everywhere and enjoy the episode. So, I went ahead and hit record, Tom, just so we can
Yeah,
get into it, because I keep things horribly unprofessional and I'll trim out
I
whatever I need to.
feel like what you meant to say was you keep things authentic.
Authentic. I want everyone to have a genuine experience. That's
Exactly.
exactly what that is.
Authentic. You keep things authentic, my man.
Yes. The Strength Agenda's new branding availability where they can help you remarket your stupid words.
Listen, you have no idea. Like we've got a whole like consulting side of things that we're doing now. And
Jeez.
it is legitimately stuff like that that I talk to people about.
Hey, yeah, you sound like an idiot when you say this. Maybe don't do that.
Listen, I do it a little bit nicer than that. I'm not that mean. Now if we're on like the filing
This is
games.
why I don't run a consulting business.
Yeah, it's just no. Well, it's just like fun, like fun fact because it affects both of us, or it's part of our social circle. The Rogue Invitational is going on this weekend or whatever, and Rogue posted their photos. You can also cap this. This could be your like clip for the soundbite for the social
Oh,
media. It just Rogue posted this thing of like like, and I should understand it's in Scotland. They want people to wear the kilts and stuff like that. But if you look at the CrossFitters, like they post like all the guys competing in the CrossFit, and that was the first one I saw. I saw all the other ones. The other ones look fine, but you post like the CrossFitter one, and I think it's like 10 competitors or something like that. Like Ricky Garrard is the only one that is like actually into it. The other third of the guys look like they just don't want to be there at all. There's another third of guys that are just wearing like street clothes and pants like underneath the kilt, and then there's
hmm.
like two or three guys that are just not wearing the kilt at all, and it's like their media package. And I'm like, this look like the intent was awesome, but the execution was absolutely terrible. Like
Was
like just
terribly mid.
take like Ricky Garard's body and just put everybody else's face on it because he was the only one that was like into the shoot.
That was committed to it. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
you know what? In their defense of wearing normal clothes under their kilt, I think Scott Medlin has always worn pants under his kilt for every shag game I've ever been
I
to.
mean
So,
that's fine. I'm just talking about like I think it was and I love him as a human being, Chandler Smith. Like he had like a puffy jacket and like really baggy like sweatpants, and then he had the kilt on. It was just like
so
it
they just
literally,
had no one coaching them or shedding a
yeah,
layer prior to this whole
yeah.
photo
He
shoot.
just he just walked. It was like he walked in to do the photo shoot. They handed him a kilt. He just put it on over what he was wearing, and then just like stood there and like nonchalantly stared at the camera while they shot photos.
That's fantastic.
Yeah,
I
like
love
I
every
said,
bit of that.
so now I'm getting into this aspect of things, and I'm noticing these little things with marketing and stuff like that, and I'm just like, man, like just like a little bit of coaching up here, and because like the women strongmen looked awesome, the female CrossFitter ones looked awesome. So I'm sure somebody said something because the CrossFit dudes were the first one to go, and everybody else after that looked awesome. So I'm sure something was said, but like there was nothing they could do about it, so they just posted what they had with the guys, and it looked awful.
The ship had sailed. Speaking of great marketing, look at us both wearing our Highland Strunk t-shirts.
I
What a,
know, I know. So shout out to Jay O'Neill. He posted a video, a training video the other day, and they had the trigonometry shirt. And I commented on the post. I was like, hey man, like love that shirt. Need to get that one. And he texted me. He's like, hey, what's your address? He's like, it's my buddy's company. He goes, I'll send you a shirt. And I was like, awesome. Shout out to Highland Strong. A shout out to Jay O'Neill. It's a comfy shirt. And I figured because I had none of my other Highland Game shirts washed, I figured I'd wear that for your podcast.
yeah, there you go. Look at us go.
Look at us.
Um,
Who'd have thought?
look at us. Hey, hey, who'd have thought? Who'd have thought? Not me. Um, anyway, all right. So if we can actually, I'll try
Yeah.
and steer us mildly on the topic. So you are our kickoff guest for kind of an off-season series that I'm trying to put
Woo.
together. Yeah, woo. To try, I want to make it applicable to all levels, and we'll get through that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I want to put something out there right now at the beginning of the off season that kind of gives people some info on the off season and how to work around their throws training and their weight room and
Yeah.
side quests they may go on to and just all sorts of funky stuff. Because we're all going to have a lot of downtime, and I
Yeah. Yeah.
you tend to see a lot of people drop off this time of year because they're not
100%.
throwing and they're not, and so I'd like to try and keep people going and kind of
Yeah.
prevent that
Yeah.
if we can.
No,
So
and this was a topic that you and I think we discussed it last year at a games.
yeah, like a year when because that's the last time I saw you was at like Greenville last year.
I think so. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and then we talked about doing this, and I was never able to get scheduling right, and
Yeah.
trying to
Yeah.
nail Matt down to a time is like trying to catch a leprechaun.
Yeah. Right.
So,
Which you'd
but
think would be easier because he's a large human being.
right, like yeah, it would be fairly easy, but he keeps breaking out of the nets. Uh,
Now that tracks. That tracks. Yeah, no, it's like
yeah.
with this subject area, and it was funny because like after I think we talked this yesterday. Yeah, yesterday you
Hmm.
messaged me. And so I kind of put something a little bit together for you just to kind of like to give out like, free info, stuff like that. Like and again, I figure I'd make it as adjustable so you slide up in terms of your experience level versus like down based on what equipment you have and stuff like that. So yeah, just like
Nice.
however you want to attack this, like we can just start
Yeah.
getting into it.
I want to give people just the tiniest bit of background since this isn't an interview series, but I want for anyone who maybe doesn't know who you are or why they should care,
I'm a
dude,
schmuck.
yeah, I'm just some fucking guy.
Just some
But
guy with a beard.
yeah, and she's, I mean, a dime a dozen in this sport, you know?
Pretty much. Pretty
Yeah.
much.
So, so you've been in the Highland Games for how long? Longer than me. So at least, what, a decade, probably?
First Highland Games I ever did was 2006.
Okay. Yeah. So going on 2 decades. Wow. And then, so you were, I say were just because you've taken a hiatus. I don't want to
No, no, no,
cast
no.
anything into the universe, you know?
Yeah, I competed at the amateur circuit. Did world amateur worlds. Well, at the time it was the amateur worlds up in Minnesota a couple times. I took a 4 year or 3 year break from like 2013 to 2016 because I was competing for trying to compete for the Olympic trials and Olympic weightlifting. Came back in 2016, kind of had to redo the whole amateur thing all over again because I like people knew who I was. I had my connections, but I didn't have like the same ones as I did before. Certain ADs had taken over. did my pro jump in 2018. The Detroit Highland Games. That was my first Highland Games that I ever did on the pro circuit. Been a pro ever since. I would consider myself a jobber, middle of the road pro. Like I'm really good at caber. I'm pretty decent at height events, and I'm like average at all the other stuff. Like I don't have numbers that'll blow you away. My crowning, achievement, so to speak, was I got to go up to Fergus in 2022, I believe. I was a last minute alternate for Fergus Highland Games, which those who don't know, it's one of I believe Fergus is the longest running games in Canada. They hosted world championships a couple times, and I won the caber championship competition up there. Um, so they got a cool little trophy. My name's on it next to a lot of people that it has no business being next to. But like I said, I just enjoy the Highland Games from like a lot of the camaraderie and stuff like that. And then like right around 2018 or 2019, I started coaching people just simply because similar to how Matt Vincent started his throws lab, people just weren't sure how to structure their season of training, both like the off season to the preseason to the in season stuff. And I had a system that was working, and I just been coaching people since about 2019 or so, and it's just been slowly building from there. And like you and I were talking about it the other day because I posted out in my story. I put together a training manual last year. I don't have any desire to revamp that because I've revamped it 3 years in a row and it's exhausting. But the one we have out right now is pretty awesome. Last year alone, I looked it up after you and I talked. Last year we sold 56 copies of
Nice.
that training manual, so it's really cool that people are getting use out of that. I've got about 11 athletes that I work with and stuff like that, a variety of Masters World Championship podium finishers, all the way down to guys that have been in like the C's, advancing to the B's, B's to the A's, and then I've got a couple A's that next year are looking to try to get big invites to like East Coast championships, amateur championships, and stuff like that, so they can hopefully get their pro invite at some point.
Yeah, because I mean, I run into I know on our circuit, I think what is it, Jen Gomez, Greg
Yep.
Adams,
And then Jesse.
either
Jesse's the big.
Jesse or James. Yeah, one of the brothers.
Jesse's
Jesse
the
is
one I
he?
work with. Yeah, yeah.
Yep,
He's my Virginia boy.
yep. So yeah, it's spreading around. So I mean, honestly, it some people in other sports might hear like, oh, 56 copies. If you could sell 56 copies of one thing,
Yeah,
this year to the Highland Games, like that is a substantial portion of the market. You
yeah. I
know,
mean, like
I
the to put it into perspective, the first manual I put out sold 15.
that's what I'm saying. So
So
that's fantastic. So you've been coaching Highland Games, and then prior to that, how long have you been? Because you talked about trying to go to trials for Olympic
yeah,
weightlifting and things like that. Because you've done a bazillion sports, but is it
yes,
fair to say that Olympic lifting and things like that are the ones that you've done the
yeah.
most, or for the longest
I
period of
would say it's
time?
like I say it's a split thing. So like when I went to college as a shot putter. Was a three-time All-American in the shot put, and initially we were taught how to do cleans. Never learned how to do a snatch. I've been doing cleans since like high school. Got taught how to do them the right way in college and stuff like that. And then another Highland Games guy who passed away a few years ago, Terry Smith, actually introduced me to the conjugate method. Louis Simmons, West Side, because he had just gotten back. He went out to Ohio for a couple weeks, got to train at West Side, came back, kind of showed me the conjugate with the bands and all that stuff. And then he pretty much, I wouldn't say taught me, but he kind of showed me how to infuse Olympic lifting into the conjugate method. And then when I started working with Glenn Penlay, when I was doing the Olympic weightlifting stuff, he gave me a bunch of the old manuals. I got two of them sitting right back there. But one of the original manuals, like the conjugate method, comes from the Dynamo Club, which used to be an Olympic weightlifting club back in Russia in like the 50s and 60s. So it kind of came full circle, and I just started incorporating, the things I liked from the conjugate method with the Olympic lifting and stuff like that. And that was kind of how I created my throw system. But yeah, like you're talking about different sports. I not I guess it's a bragging a little bit, but I don't think there is a strength sport that I haven't competed at a pretty high level at that I've been able to take that system that I have and just modify it for each of the sports based on the demands, whether it's Moss wrestling, whether it's strongman, Highland Games, the Olympic lifting, and stuff like that. And so, like, I've got a
Yeah.
pretty wide resume, both of myself and athletes that I've worked with, that I've just helped get stronger over the year because I am of the utmost belief that a stronger athlete is a better athlete.
Yeah, yeah. Strength is Mark Bell, for as cheesy as some of his stuff is,
Yeah.
strength is never a weakness was a
No,
great
no.
tagline because why would it be? You
Yeah, I
know?
mean, like you
I,
look at somebody like Jen Gomez, like she's really good at caber toss, and when you look at her technique, it leaves a little bit to be desired. But the main reason she's freaking good at caber toss is because she does a ton of cleans. Most of them are not programmed, but she does like she like the hang clean is a
Jen's gonna
move.
listen to this and be like, "Oh no, everyone knows I'm going off program."
She posts about it on her social media all the time. She's like more unprogrammed cleans. Because like if she sees a deadlift, she's like, "Can I do cleans instead?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's fine." But like it's just one of those like she's got it. She understands the mechanics of the clean from the hang, like the from the knee to the hip, and it just that's a movement that transfers over very well to the caber toss. So like when she got into the Highland Games, one of the events that she picked up right away was weight for height and caber toss, and it was just because of her understanding of that movement pattern, and she just had that residual strength, like more so than a lot of the girls that she was competing at in those open or amateur divisions.
Yeah. All right. Sweet. Yeah, I was gonna say, I think you've coached, yeah, strongman, Highland Games, jujitsu. I mean,
Oh
you've
yeah, PVB.
applied. Yeah, yeah. I weirdly enough found her because a bunch of people I know compete in jujitsu, and then
Dude, she's
she kept tagging you and stuff, and I was like, wait a second.
yeah, yeah. She can't. She's like she. Funny with thing with her, she interned with me when I had a gym.
Cool.
She was just getting into. She was a power lifter at first. She started out. She was a collegiate cheerleader. Got into powerlifting and then was getting into jiu-jitsu while she was interning with me. And then she just couldn't find a training program that she liked. And I was like, here, well, I said, I've never written anything before, but let me take a stab at it and just see what you like or see if you like it or not. And it's actually become my everyday strength program that I have on the app. It's a templated program. It morphed into that because it's a lot of circuits. It's a lot of short, like it's quick. Essentially, the workout can be done in like an hour, but it covers your strength, it covers your accessories with a little bit of conditioning at the end of it. And she loved it, and she's had a lot of success. And she's a dynamite human being too.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's fantastic. So yeah, all right, cool. That sets up the foundation as to why I think this conversation is applicable and why people should pay attention. If they haven't tuned out by now, they're in it for the long haul.
Yeah,
So yeah, my intent was to ask you questions and kind of have you break it down by, hey, what do we have beginners versus intermediates,
right,
and
right,
then
right.
our more advanced athletes, what would you have them do in the off season? But if you've already got some stuff written down and you want to start
Yeah,
into it, then yeah,
yeah.
just lay into it. I'll jump in there with questions or clarification because my other caveat is I didn't start Olympic lifting until this year. Like,
Yeah,
if I could kick myself and do anything, it would have been
right.
to actually do. I trained like a stupid power lifter who also
Yep.
threw, and
That was
I was not a good power lifter. It was dumb. I the
it was
biggest.
funny you mentioned, it's funny you mentioned because that's what pretty much how Jesse got a hold of me. Jesse's like Jesse
Mhm.
Easy. He's like I trained like a bodybuilder and a power lifter, and my throws were not going anywhere. And then he worked with me. We worked together one day. Just I taught him how to do essentially a snatch from the hip, and then everything else kind of fell into place there. And he's had a pretty good season this year. But yeah, to
Yeah,
go back to your question about like just how to structure things out. So how I do this, or like the free and easy, clear way to do this is I separate it into your upper body tier, lower body tier, and then essentially like an Olympic lifting tier. And each of these exercises can be done based on like, and there's no like advanced, intermediate, like easy, so to speak. It's based on what you have access to and what you like to do. So on the lower body side of things, I split that up into two things: squatting and pulling. When we're talking about squatting in terms of priority of movement, back squat is king for me. I don't care whether it's a low bar, high bar, does not matter to me. I prefer a high bar just because it's less stress on the lower back, especially during the Highland Games season. All that throwing, like you're throwing, anywhere from 5 to 20 games, not 6 to 9 events a weekend. That's just a lot of wear and tear on the back. So the high bar is a more quad hip dominant exercise. A lot of people don't like it though because it exposes whether you're doing half reps or going full range of motion. But back squat is going to be my number one. Box squat is going to be number two, but not a squatting to a box. What I see a lot of people doing, a traditional West Side style powerlifting box squat with the wide stance. the hips back, reaching like almost like your taint back to the box with a vertical shin versus like squatting down to the box. And then the third exercise is a front squat. A lot of guys avoid the front squat simply because they can't get the bar in the front rack position, but there's so many different ways to modify that, whether you're doing like the cross arm style or the zombie style where your arms are out here. Like there's ways to get around it, but those are my three squatting exercises that I
Yeah,
like.
I always
Just
loved when I learned how to wrap my actual wrist wraps around it and just give
yeah,
myself
yeah,
a
yeah.
holding spot in front. Oh, it was a game changer. I was like, oh, I could
Yeah,
do front squats for more than 3 reps now and not kill my
yeah,
wrist. Yeah,
100%, 100%. So yeah, when we're talking about like squatting, those are my three main squatting movements. Is your standard deadlifting variations. Sumo for me is number one. I know a lot of people are going to roll their eyes or say whatever, but like in all sorts of athletic development, box squatting technique and sumo deadlifting technique, I teach very similar. Like that wide stance, that vertical shin with your hamstrings and your hips back behind the bar, and especially with that wide stance, wide bills narrow. And what I mean by that is anytime people try to tell me sumo is cheating, I will tell them flat out, it's like, okay, go ahead and pull your conventional max, take a step back, then step back up to the bar, set up for a sumo, and pull it again. If you can do it, then I get your point. But if you can't, it obviously can't be cheating because one is supposed to be easier than the other. And that is something that I will challenge my athletes with every once in a while. I will like write in there sumo conventional deadlift, like they will have to do one and then the other, and they cannot go up unless they hit it on both exercises, just to kind of keep that balance. But again, going back to the Highland Games in terms of the stress on the body, a lot of people pull their groin, they pull their hamstrings and stuff like that. And if your posterior chain and your groin and your adductors and stuff like that aren't being trained on a regular basis, your hips aren't going to be stable. You're not going to be able to brace your core. And those are two things that you need, especially for like the height events, the caber, the weights, all of that stuff. So, so my sumo deadlift is my top. And then conventional deadlift because everybody's comfortable with conventional deadlift. And then third is trap bar. I'm not a huge proponent of trap bar, but I know a lot of people like it. It's a little less wear and tear on the body. That's more of a squatting movement for me with your arms off to the sides versus being a pulling movement, but I throw it in there as a third. So those are my two lower body categories. And then upper body, essentially my priority of list is push press is number one, just simply because it gets the whole kinetic chain involved from like the hips into the leg drive into that overhead extension. And I have push press, strict press, bench press. Those are my three priorities in terms of like the pressing movements. I like strict pressing over bench pressing simply because less wear and tear on the body. Also, you just went both for the push press and the strict press. You're recruiting more upper back and shoulder stabilization in that overhead load versus the bench press. Now, a bench press I have no issues with as a whole. I just have not seen a ton of correlation with a heavy bench press in terms of things like stone going further. Now, if you're doing it more Olympic style, and what I mean by that is a lot of the Ulf Timmerman was a East German shot putter back in like the 70s and 80s. He used to do a bounce style where he would put a pad
hmm
on his chest and
yeah.
he would work on that like catching. I'm cool with that. I think that's a much more useful variation of the bench press versus the powerlifting style of taking it out, bringing it to the chest, holding it, and driving out. Like, yeah, your chest is going to look great, but if you're only throwing the Braemar stone 20 feet, like it can't be that impressive. So that's my priority order there would be push press, strict press, bench press. And then when you move over to the Olympic lifts, when I'm talking about that, like my three exercises are some variation. Like usually it'll be like a hip snatch, power clean, clean pull. I do like muscle snatches. I think they're the most like easy to do. So I would kind of sub out a hip snatch or a muscle snatch. Personally, I think muscle snatching is the best Olympic variation that you can do because you're never catching anything when it comes to the Highland Games, especially like weight for height or anything like that. You're never throwing it up and then dropping right back down underneath. You're continuing to maintain that long extension in your hammer throws, your Braemar, your sheaf, your caber, all those things. So I really like muscle snatching, but if people want to just feel nice and snappy, I will use I will use the hip snatch in there and then the power clean because everybody pretty much that comes to me knows how to do the power clean in some form or fashion. And
hmm
then the third Olympic lift is just a clean pull. A high pull in particular, and what I usually do for this is I'll have them set up like a PVC pipe as a target to kind of pull up into. So just kind of to review, lower body I split it up into two categories: push pull. back squat, box squat, front squat. On the deadlift variations, sumo, conventional trap bar. On your pressing, I have push press, strict press, bench press, and then your Olympic variations, either muscle snatch or hip snatch, power clean, clean pull.
Nice. Um, so that's your exercise selection. You said so you wouldn't necessarily change that structure based on whether the thrower is beginner, intermediate, or
Now,
advanced
if you,
as far as throwing goes. You're going to keep those movements
yeah,
more
yeah,
or
and
less the
like
same throughout.
if we're talking like a quick, dirty way of doing it, what I would do is I gave you three variations of each one. What I would do is I would run a simple 3 week wave where week one you're doing 5 by 5, right? Is the first weight you put on the bar, that is set number one. So you have 5 sets of 5 reps to build, and so whatever you get to by that fifth set, you get to by that fifth set. Week two, 6 by 3. So the first weight you put on, you then have 6 triples to build. The goal now, the key here is knowing your body and knowing what you're capable of. So by the time you get to that sixth triple, you're trying to beat whatever the weight was that you hit for that last set of 5. And week three, you run 7 by 2. So you're getting one more set, but you're doing one less rep in terms of overall volume. And that last double, you're trying to beat the triple from the previous week. And so if you do that, that's 3 weeks of work right there. Then you pick another variation from each of those categories. Run another 3 week wave. Then you pick the third variation, and then you run another 3 week wave. So like, and what I will tell people, especially with like the lower body stuff, because even if you train 4 days a week, great, but that you could do 3 days a week and have the same amount of results. But like, um, that's 9 weeks of work right there that you're getting a good chunk of volume in, and you're not pushing always to a heavy single, because everybody always wants to go into the gym and pull a heavy single and stuff like that. The chances are though, when you're doing, like, especially once you get comfortable with a movement and you're doing those doubles, you're gonna miss the last rep, and then your chances are you're gonna be pretty close to that heavy single. But like, so for anybody that is just looking for just a bare bones, like, cover all the bases sort of a program, if you ran that 5 by 3, or 5 by 5, 6 by 3, 7 by 2 waves on those, like, I think 12 movements that I gave, you're going to get a ton of work in. And that would be for anybody, whether you're beginner, intermediate, or advanced. If you just don't feel like getting really fancy with it, obviously you could throw in accessory work and stuff along those lines. But just like the basic tier of the program, like, that's what I always suggest to people, is just a basic way of just getting as strong as humanly possible, especially in the off season, because it gets boring if you don't get to throw or do any of these other stuff. So I feel like usually, and this was something that I did with my high school kids, and that was a very similar format that we did. 3 weeks was roughly about the time that, like, they started to kind of like be like, oh, I want to change it up, I want to do something different. So just finish your week of doubles and then move on to another exercise and stuff like that. And it's kind of similar to the 5-3-1 protocol, where it's basic, it's simple, but it works. And it allows you to kind of just rotate the exercises every 3 weeks, so you're getting some new stimulus in terms of your training loads.
Nice. Um, Now, when you talked about that, using the off season to get as strong as possible, with your athletes, is that the main goal of your off season? Is it building strength, or are you trying to hammer conditioning now, or
So yeah, like,
which way are you pushing that?
yeah, so for me, like, so with my remote athletes and in the manual and stuff like that, I have that all mapped out in terms of, yes, it's a lot more in depth than what I just gave you. That is for like the somebody who has, like, essentially like workout ADHD, and
Hmm.
just needs to just get in, move some weight, and then get out because they've got, other things to do and stuff like that. But like, if I were to take like a more like advanced approach to it, so to speak, like, yes, so like I would do some sort of conditioning. You have to be doing conditioning in the off season. At the end of the day, a pyramid is only as big as its base is wide. So like, if you're trying to do these heavy sets and you're resting, 3, 4, or 5 minutes in between each set because you're out of breath after performing a heavy set of 5, like, your butt needs to get on a sled. You need to be pulling the sled around. You need to be doing some conditioning work. So a really easy way to get conditioning work in that I do with my athletes is something called EDT, escalated density training. And what that is you pick a couplet. So like, for instance, if you can do pull-ups, bench press and a pull-up, right? You set up a bar, set up your pull-up rack, you set a timer for 5 minutes, and for 5 minutes straight. So the bench press load is somewhere between 50 to 60% of your best, nothing too crazy. But you're going to get on the bench, you're going to perform 1 rep, then you're going to get off the bench, you're going to go up to the pull-up bar, do a pull-up, drop back down, do a bench, do a pull up. And the whole purpose of it is for the 5 minutes, you're trying to do that at a conversational pace. And when I mean conversational is like if you're doing this in the gym, Jeremy, I go up to you and I start asking you questions. Obviously, I'm not trying to get you to have a full on conversation, but you shouldn't be so out of breath that you can't respond to me in some form or fashion, however short that is. And then once that 5 minute timer is up, you should know roughly about how many rounds you got through. Then you rest for a few minutes, do it again and try to beat the number of reps that you got in the first one. And like I'll have my athletes, depending on their conditioning level, do anywhere from like 3 to 5 of these in one training session. That's all they do for a training session. So it'll be, and you can couple. And what I try to do is like a protagonist antagonistic movement. So a fun favorite of mine would be some sort of like a snatch clean variation with a heavy slam ball, like throwing a slam
Mm-hmm.
ball down, going back and forth between those. If you have the equipment to do so, doing a squat and a deadlift. Like perform a squat, then do your deadlift, like simultaneously or anything like that. I've done other ones where I've done like a Pendlay row into a push press. Like you can do a bunch of these different couplets. You can mix and match them. I've done box jumps in there. Like I've done like a box jump with a heavy slam ball, or I've done a depth jump with a muscle snatch. Like you could the more knowledge you have of exercise like selection, the more fun you can have with this. But what I will do is I will do the same ones for a whole week. Like I'll have like an upper day, a lower day, a second upper day, and a second lower day, and I'll put the exercises in. Then I'll do another week of completely different exercises, and then I'll repeat that and just see where my conditioning is. And usually, what I'll have my guys do is do that for 4 weeks, and that's like our base conditioning. That's usually what we'll do before any major shift. And then after that is more of like the volume type stuff, like what I just talked about. I do a more modified 5-3-1 version, but interchanging and putting in what I just talked about with the 5x5, the 6x3, and the 7x2 is a great way to insert that. And then once you're done with that, you run that for 9 weeks or whatever we discussed. Then you could do another 4 week conditioning block. You know, and just kind of making sure that you don't get because the last thing you want and a lot of things that people don't understand is like the Highland Games is such a long season now, especially with like the advent of social media. Like you
Mm-hmm.
guys are literally, especially you guys out there in like the Mid Atlantic region, you guys are
Yeah.
throwing pretty from February to October. Like that is a long time to be on. And so when I was getting into the game, somebody talked to me about like energy systems, and you have like your Olympic lifters who are essentially like a switch, an on-off switch. You turn it on, boom. Turn it off, off. But like sports like wrestling, like the Highland Games, because of just like the longer duration, like you have those quick bursts, but you also have those like periods where you're maintaining. Is it's more like a dimmer switch. And that's how
Mm-hmm.
I try to treat like the training for the Highland Games. Is you need to be like you don't want to be gassing out by the time you get to your last event, but you also have 10 more days like that coming up. In the next like 8 to 6 6 to 8 months. So it's one of those situations where you've got to be in shape to be able to handle the season. You don't necessarily need to be hitting like max PRs and stuff like that all the time, but you need to be able to maintain like 80-90% of your best throughout the season as best as possible in terms of being able to handle those loads and stuff like that. So throwing in conditioning is just a great way for the body to be able to recover quicker, to be able to, move faster between events, between lifts, things along those lines. Like just I don't think enough people in the Highland Games do enough conditioning, if I'm being 100% honest.
No, and I've been guilty of that. I mean, amongst plenty of other
100%.
things with poorly structuring mine. Like I'll own that 1,000%. It always starts off with the season really well. Those
Yeah.
first 2 or 3 games feel fine because you haven't done it
Yeah.
in a while. But you get to game number 10 of the year and you're wondering why by the end of the day you've got nothing left in the tank.
Right.
And it's not
Right.
like some other sports. You don't feel winded. It's not like you're out of breath, but like you just can't find that other gear because you've run out of gas. So
Yeah.
it's for sure
Uh,
there. And then like you talked about, it sounds like Jesse was smarter than me and caught on that he shouldn't be training that way. Because I swear to God, I training like a power lifter for the first 5 years of the Highland Games
right.
set me up for a decent amount of success at my first game. Because as a
Yeah. Yeah.
B, throwing 13 feet feels really cool when you're strong
Right.
enough to
Yeah.
do that. And no one else is doing that. And then when you realize how much you've overtaxed your lower back by doing low bar squats and conventional deadlifts
Yeah. Yeah.
every single week, and you're like, holy shit, I'm 4 years into this and I haven't hit a WOB PR. What's happening?
Right.
Because
Right.
nothing's getting better. Um, but In that vein, if you had to point out, is there one thing that's glaring in particular that you see a lot of Highland gamers doing wrong with their off season? Is there like something that really sticks out to you?
There's two things. The first thing is put the implements away for a month. I'm not saying for, indefinitely. But one of the things, and I know it's hard, especially like I lived in North Carolina for a little bit. Like I get it, you could throw year round if you want to, and I understand that that urge is there. But I don't think once you get to a particular level, and I'm talking about like high end B and above, I don't think people realize the central nervous system fatigue that can set in from constant throwing, especially that 56. Like that 56 is a bear to throw, whether you're throwing it for height or you're throwing it for distance. That thing takes a toll on the body. The 22-pound hammer takes a toll on the body. Um, so the big thing I would always suggest in the off season, I always tell my athletes, I'm like, give me 2 months, please. 2 months of no throwing. Just go in, lift, let your body recover a little bit. Because the other thing too is like you'll get these like overuse injuries, in the shoulder and the elbow and the
Hmm.
wrist because it's all that stress is just on one arm. You got to give it a break. So that like that's the first thing that I see with a lot of people is like I just want people just to put the implements away for 2 months. Just give the body a break. Let the body recover. You're not going to forget how to throw. I promise you, you're not going to forget how to throw. I remember, I'm probably dating myself here a little bit. Some people remember him, some people don't. But Craig Smith was a really good pro thrower. And I remember literally, I would like, because when I threw in the amateur circuit, I was mostly around the Midwest. So I would see him and Kerry and Mark and all those guys. Now, Craig is an extreme example of this, but it just shows the benefit of muscle memory. He would do like 20 games a year. Like he had a ridiculous pro schedule that he was following. And literally, like we would throw, usually Richmond was like the last games of the year that he
Hmm.
would throw back when they used to have it at the old racetrack. And I would watch him put his bag in the back of his car at the end of that games because he was driving back home. And then first games of the year was usually somewhere in like April. I want to say Ohio Scottish games used to be the one that we would throw in April. Like it was a very early games. It might even been Alma. I don't because Alma's like closer to Memorial Day weekend. But whatever the games was, you would then literally see Craig go to the back of his truck or car or whatever, open the trunk and pull that bag of his throwing stuff out. And that was literally the first time he touched that bag of throwing stuff after his season ended. All he did during the season was he just lifted. Now, like I said, he was an outlier, a little bit of a genetic freak and stuff like that. But I know Kerry, somebody that I've learned so much from as a thrower. And as a coach, like he would vouch for this as well. Like you've got to give the body a break, and and that was what I learned from a lot of those guys. Because like I was trying to set up indoor throwing areas at my college so I can continue to throw and stuff like that. And Kerry was the first person. He's like, dude, you need a break. Like just give the body a rest. And once I started doing that, like my quality of overall throws, like every once in a while I would just play. I was also in track and field in college, so like I got to throw a little bit. But like the months of like November and December, I didn't do much throwing. And sure enough, I'd show up in January and I didn't forget how to throw a stone. Like it just the technique didn't leave. It's just giving your body that break to rest. So that's the first thing. The second thing is intent. I see a lot of people. Scott Farr is probably right now the best person with this. Jacob Langworthy is another good one too that I see. And if I'm forgetting anybody else, I apologize. With the algorithm, your stuff doesn't show up in my feed like it does for them. I see their stuff all the time. And those two are not two of the biggest dudes out there, but holy crap, if they are not some of the most explosive and just like intentful throwers that I have seen. Like they put so much effort and force into everything that they do that like it's no wonder when you watch them throw, Scott in particular with his weights, it's no wonder, the weights just explode out of his hands. And so I think intent is something that a lot of guys are missing, girls too as well in their training, is they figure just because they moved a particular weight that they're doing a good job. But like I would rather see somebody, drop 20 pounds off of like let's just say somebody pulls 500 pounds on the deadlift and it takes them 10 seconds to pull that deadlift. They grind at the knee, grind at the hip, all that stuff to the lockout. I would rather see them pull 475 and get that lift done in like 6 seconds.
Hmm.
Just the intent and the speed. And that was one thing that Carrie Overfell kind of showed me. Terry Smith was another one, is like measuring velocity. Not everybody has access to velocity, but there's an app that I use with my guys that's a free one. Drawing a blank on the name of it right now. Rep speed. Um, Dang it, I am drawing a blank, and he's going to kill me when Matt.
That's all right. If
Matt,
you remember it, you can text it to me. I'll put it in the bio line of the episode or something.
there you go.
We'll
Anyways,
make it up.
he was up in Buffalo, New York. Now he's out in San Diego. He's another pro. Drawing a blank.
Matt Hand.
Jesus, there it is. Yes,
Oh,
Matt
okay.
Hand.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was the one that showed me the app that he was using, and it's a nice, easy app that you can use as long as it can see the bar or it can see the weights. It'll track velocity for you, and it'll give you a good measurement. So it's just another way, when you can get in all the science on that. You've got, for strength work, you want to be moving between zero point 0.3 and zero point 0.6 meters per second. Speed work, zero point 0.8 to 1.0 meters per second. But it's just a good way to measure your intent in the gym. Like, I will use it, especially when I'm in season, to determine whether or not I should be adding weight to the bar or not. Like, if I can't move a particular percentage at a speed that I need to be moving it at, I'm not going to add weight to the barbell. Because I need to focus on making sure I'm hitting those velocity parameters and stuff like that. But so, like, to kind of wrap up or summarize what your question was, the first thing is people need to give the body a break in terms of throwing, at least a month, preferably
Hmm.
2 months. And then the second thing is, no matter what their kind of training program they're following, if they focus on their intent and moving things as powerfully and as explosively as possible, that's going to do a lot more good than just kind of doing a pedestrian lift walk through the park.
Yeah. I'll echo your first point for sure, just in case people are on the fence. It's okay to step
Yeah.
away for a month. You're gonna be fine. As long as you didn't do your first game in October and then now you're in your
Yeah.
off season, like
Yep.
take a minute. I've had that conversation with Aaron George multiple times where I'll be
No, yeah.
like, dude, I'm coming back. It happened literally with Crystal Coast that I just did. I thought my season was done in September, so I switched modes. I put the stuff away. My throwing box was on the porch.
Yep.
Didn't touch it. And then they're like, "Do you want to come down?" Cool. Yeah, sure. I'll come down. I got in maybe one practice, and I still was a foot off of my lightweight PR. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's fine. It'll come back. It'll
Yeah. No,
actually not hurt as much. It will be
yeah.
fine.
It was funny because
Yeah.
that was me with Clover last year. Like, Scott had asked if I wanted to throw at Clover as an exhibition. I told him, I was like, I haven't thrown in like a month and a half. Like, I threw Labor Day weekend in Wisconsin and hadn't thrown since. And he's like, I don't care. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And like, I had some good marks. I was like, oh, all right, we're doing some things. So yeah, no, the body does not forget. Now this year is going to be a whole different story for me because I'm dealing with my Achilles injury. Like, I'm gonna actually have to start getting out there and start doing some drills and doing some throwing and stuff like that because it's been almost a year since, or done over a year since I've thrown. And so, like, that's a little bit of different. Like, if you got a longer layoff, like, you're gonna have to get some throwing in, some extra throws in and stuff like that. But like you said, if your season ended in like September, October, you can afford to take off some time till about February, January before you start getting some throws
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So
in.
awesome. Is there anything else you wanted to cover? I don't mind keeping these more on the brief side because I'm going to try and have everyone come on and hit different angles. But was there
Yeah,
anything
yeah.
else that you wanted to throw in? Do you feel like you hit everything that you had?
Yeah, yeah, no, I think, like I said, you want to talk about off-season like exercise selection. My thought was just to give people a variety of main movements that had the best carryover to the throws and to the games themselves. Like I said, if you cover the bases with those 12 exercises, you're going to be a pretty well-rounded strength athlete when it comes to the throws. And then, yeah, just given the different variations of more advanced in terms of when to include conditioning, when to include intent and velocity versus like the beginner to intermediate, where it's just like just follow a 3 week wave of 5x5, 6x3, 7x2. Like, they're all tried and true methods. There is nothing brand new about strength and conditioning. It has all just been
No.
regurgitated,
Uh-huh.
reinvented, and recycled. It's just when things, velocity kind of comes and goes. Like, it was a big thing in like the 90s. Everybody was using the Tendo units and stuff like that. And then in like the early 2000s, these little power factor devices came into play, and everybody had a power factor device, and then it kind of went away again. And now I'm kind of noticing another resurgence with like apps like Iron Path and Rep Speed and all these different apps that you can now download for your phones. And now you got the little portable devices that you can take with you into the gym and stuff like that for like $200. Like it's starting to kind of come back around. So just find what works for you and your method of training, and just go with it. But just be consistent with it.
All right. Well, awesome, man. Everyone can find you at what? At the Strength Agenda on Instagram, and is it Strength Agenda or thestrengthagenda.com? I don't want to get.
The website is the Strength Agenda. I believe it's I think it is the Strength Agenda on Instagram as well. It's either Strength Agenda or the Strength Agenda. Yeah, we have our manual up there. We're going to be doing a push for that here in the next couple of weeks because my guys are going to be starting their off-season work next week. And yeah, we also do the remote coaching and stuff like that. And then I also just will review people's videos. Jeremy Robinson just sent me a clean the other day, and he's like, "Hey, can you take a look at this for me?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And so, I'm always happy to help. Just help people learn, help people understand, and stuff like that. So any questions people have, like, please don't hesitate. And then my personal handle on Instagram is just at Strength Coach Sroka. But if you look through the Strength Agenda stuff, you'll see it on there as well. So
Awesome. Well, hey, I appreciate you coming on, man.
yeah, man, I appreciate you. I appreciate the opportunity. I'm glad we finally got to do this.
Yeah, absolutely.